All right.
All right, let's get into it. All right.
Apparently that's the start. Welcome to another episode of the Car Cranks. Hello, I'm Jay.
I'm Dodgee.
Yeah, and how many times have we done this now? 5, 4?
Oh, ones that every time.
Of all time?
About 5. The ones that have actually posted 2.
No, there's more than that. There's 4, I'm pretty sure. We recorded an entire episode last week and it didn't record. So hopefully this one is. Yeah.
So we're just going to rehash what didn't record, so hopefully I can remember it, but yeah.
So anyway, yes, thank you for tuning in. We've got some topics of conversation as per usual. And
What have we got?
let's see now.
Unlock it.
Hello.
There we go.
We need to go into here and let's have a look. So anyway, feeling better?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, everything's still kind of...
You're still attached?
Still attached, still working. I had an operation, it'd be nearly a month ago now. It's been, I think this is the 4th week. What's today, Tuesday? Yeah, be the 4th week. And it was a fairly large operation where they cut me open from stem to nearly stern. Rearranged a few things, threw a few things out, connected some bits, and now I'm all good apparently. So, and yeah. It's, I won't ask them if they want to see my scar.
No.
Because I went out to a local car meet on Sunday, and because they haven't saw me for a while, and I said, "You want to see my scar?" Because it stands out at the moment.
So,
because I've been shaved as well, so that kind of weird. Ever seen a ginger cat being shaved at a vet's? Yeah, it kind of looks like that.
too much information, especially for a car show. Anyway, apologies.
Anyway, we're back.
Bought any cars or sold any cars recently?
No. Oh, recently, my last purchase I got off a guy at work, and it's a what do you call it? Not a dune buggy, just a buggy, VW buggy, just a floor pan and a roll cage. That's it.
Like a beach buggy thing.
Not a fiberglass body, just a steel cage.
But yeah, like something that
Skeleton.
probably would have had a beach buggy body on it at some point, maybe. Or...
No,
not at all.
No, Mad Max style.
Oh, okay.
Just a floor pan, VW, shortened floor pan, and a roll cage, which is real basic. Actually, it's not even completely finished. Well, the floor's not completely welded up, so there's nothing really holding the front end together. It's just the pan. So I want to get that all welded up, but it's got a roll cage that I want to add extra bars into because it's just basically 2 loops and 2 joiners, and I want to make it better. 31s on the rear. Actually, I think they're similar to 31s, but I think they're actually Bobcat tyres.
Bobcat tyres?
They're
really?
bald, but they're Bobcat tyres.
Yeah, right.
Which is just weird.
Yeah.
And the fronts aren't much better. But they are wide 5 rims. So it's old wide 5 rims, not the four studs.
Okay.
So it's 5, but they're the wide stud. But they're widened rims, and they've got these big-ass balloon tyres on it, so it looks just like a dune buggy. But, yeah, Mad Max style.
Maybe we'll have to throw a photo in. Maybe.
Ding! Yeah.
Maybe here? I don't know.
But nothing else.
I sold 2 cars recently. I worked out that I had 6 running and driving and licensed cars.
And licensed.
Yeah. And insured.
Rich.
As well. Yeah, so I had
Made 'em.
all of it going. And yeah, the mistake there, of course, was that having so many cars means that it's expensive. Not only that, but also trying to juggle space and stuff like that, and I have limited space. And as a consequence, I sold 2. So I'm officially down to 4.
That's good.
One of which is just parts.
Oh, okay.
Which
Running, registered?
Registered, running, driving, insured, but I bought it for parts. A mate of mine has taken it, fixed it, is driving it around while he pulls his car apart.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's a VR Commodore. It's not very exciting.
So it's not
I'll
in
flash
your
a photo
possession
up.
at the moment. He's using it. So.
He's got it. Yeah, he's got it. Okay. So the MR2 is still being panel and painted, and I sold the FTO, Mitsubishi FTO.
Oh.
Yeah, had an FTO. Sold that as well.
So you kind of got rid of 3 cars.
Yeah, but one of them's still mine. The other 2 have been sold and transferred. One of them I sold to a mate. VF Commodore. wagon.
Oh,
Silver
okay.
wagon. I sold that. Hopefully. So he bought that. I gave him the use of it for, I think it was a week and a bit.
Yeah.
And
He loved it.
Well, this is someone who was basically daily driving a 60 series Land Cruiser, NA diesel.
Ooh.
So
Yeah.
I do like those cars, but if you want something that starts, runs, drives, is refined, isn't going to have your significant other complaining about the noise it makes, actually has some sort of semblance of economy, then VF Commodore 60 Series Land Cruiser or a Camry. You're such a convert. I know one of our previous conversations we were talking about, and I'd said something about, because you're talking about all these cheap cars, everything, and I just said Japanese. And you knew deep down, but you were getting, I think, sidetracked by things like ultra cheap Ford Focuses and Holden Astras and Peugeots and all this other junk that basically...
And VW, not rabbits, GTIs and just the things that come up on auction sites, because I bought my camera from auction sites.
Yep.
And all these other ones come. I thought, why are they always coming up? They seem to be fine. No, they're not.
They all have this similar problem.
Yeah. It's all Volkswagen though. But I bought the Camry and it's like, it does everything. It works. It's like, okay, I don't mind them.
Camry.
They just as a basic, shopping trolley, go to work and back thing. It's like, it's perfect. The heater works, the aircon works, electric windows work, everything works. And if they break, it's not hard to fix them. Like I said before, the window wouldn't work, and I thought, the window winder or something's gone wrong with it, And every car has wires now, steel wires going through. I opened up the Camry, mechanical arm, 3 bolts, 10 minutes, done. It's like, why aren't all cars like that? It's so easy. You can sit that's it, scissor action.
Every time.
It's done. But no, they put wires and tracks and stuff.
No. Overly complicated.
Yeah.
Every time I've pulled a window or door apart to fix something, it's one, I've been on a Japanese car, and two, it's always had rods rather than pulleys and wires and stuff like that.
Rods?
You know what I mean? Like, arms.
Oh, yeah. Scissor arms, yeah.
Yeah, it's always had those.
Yeah, and it's
as
just
opposed
so
to
much easier to do.
else.
I mean, it takes like that much room, and it just goes, and it's done.
Easy.
And the motor attaches directly to it, and it's not a big motor, because it's only got to pull up a window, and everything's nice and loose. Everything works. But you go like a Hyundai i20, and or even a Falcon, a BA Falcon. You got a panel. The inside door panel is like solid steel. You got to get your arms in behind it to undo everything, because you can't see everything. It's inside the door, and then it's just a freaking nightmare.
So here's a lesson, kids. Just because it's cheap to buy doesn't mean it's cheap to fix.
No.
Some of this stuff is very, very cheap for a reason.
And they just break. When you put wires in a window to hold it, it's going to get tangled up and come off, especially when you've got nylon rollers. They're going to snap. They're going to fall apart, especially on an over 15-year-old car.
Yeah, 100%.
But with things like the Camry in there, where it's just maybe some rollers, 2 rollers, which you can easily replace, but it's just a scissor action. It's like, it's so easy. We've been using them for 50-something years. And it just works.
100%. 100%.
But car manufacturers don't see that.
All right, well, let's get on to, shall we say, an official topic.
Yes.
All right. Here's something that you need to get your head around, I guess, or have a bit of a think about. So watch the eyes glaze over. And anyway, can bad cars be good? And what I mean is, can it endear itself to you at some point? Like it's flawed, it's bad, it's got personality, it's a pain in the backside, but...
Well, isn't that what the whole Holden brand's been built on?
This guy. Put your comments down below.
Blaze me.
I'll link his channel. You can get in touch with him via that.
Look at every French car. And Fiat.
Yeah.
Fix it again, Tony. It's the motto. They're rust out, and they're just full
old
apart.
Lancias as well.
And yet in Australia, we still sell Peugeots and Fiats and Lancias and stuff, and they're a horrible car. But people are endeared by it. They love the styling. I mean, mind you, some of the new Fiat stuff like that 124 Spider convertible little thing. Yeah. That's a nice looking car.
It's a Mazda, that's why.
Yeah, but it's a nice looking car, and it's like, okay, but obviously the pre-conglomerate, everything's owned by one company type thing. They had their own style and their own things, like people with V-dubs, owning V-dubs, it's just different. Even though it's a V-dub, underpowered, 36 horsepower, blah, blah, blah.
You're talking about Beetles?
Yeah, mainly
Or you're
Beetles.
talking about stuff that's like a Beetle, like Type 3s and all that sort of stuff.
Any of that old
wagons.
stuff. It's like people, if you had a VW, you're a hippie or conservative, or, and it's like, but
Flower power.
yeah, and because they didn't go fast, they didn't do much, but they just did, and they had their own style. People loved the little round things or the square backs or whatever it was, and they bought them in droves. Like we still see them around now because they're still going, unlike a lot of other cars and companies.
I was always astounded by the engineering in them, in that fan moves so much air. Like between 18 and 25 meters of air a second.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's why that's why the whole air-cooled thing works, is because that fan is very efficient.
A lot of the early Porsches did the same thing. Their fans were a lot bigger, and it's like, Porsche used them.
Yeah, Porsche did, absolutely.
So, I mean, even I think it's Tatra. Tatra have a lot of air-cooled stuff. They have an air-cooled V8. A few people, not many, have stuck a Tatra air-cooled V8 in the back of a Beetle. It does stick out that much, but literally an air-cooled V8. It's like, okay, because it just works.
Well,
if it's built right, it just works.
Yeah,
and the same thing, fan, it moves all the air through, it just keeps it cooler. And it's like, an air-cooled V8 in the back of a little car like that. So, okay.
So would you class an old Volkswagen as a bad car that's good?
I wouldn't say it was a bad car. It's just a basic car.
Right. Okay.
I mean, you can have good cars that are bad, but you can have basic cars that are also bad. But it was just a utilitarian vehicle. It just did what it had to do on a limited budget with limited power and limited bits to make people, I think the fanciest thing you could do was have a bloody little vase with a rose hanging out of it sitting on the inside B pillar. That was it. That was your accessories. There was bugger all else to have. And the new Beetles did exactly that when they first came out. They had a little vase with a little flower on it. And that was their nod back to the old days, because why not? It's like, But then you have weird things like the PT Cruiser, which was built to come back as a retro styling car, but using a 1.0 or 2.2, I think, neon motor.
2 litre and 2.4.
2.4. Oh, the Cruiser. What was it called?
Because there were 2 specification levels.
Yeah.
You had the, I can't remember what they were, but there was one.
Cruiser, there was
a classic, I think, or something like that, and there was something else.
Yeah.
And one had a 2 litre, one had a 2.4.
Yeah.
But
it was just a neon motor, front wheel drive, blah blah blah.
Horrific car.
Yeah, and they were kind of, that's a bad car, or a good car in theory. That was just bad in practice. I do like the shape of the PT Cruisers.
Oh my God, no.
As long as you widen the guards, drop a V6 into it, turbocharge it.
But it's front wheel drive as well, and it's too big. Well, okay.
It's not big, but it's just
it doesn't suit. No.
Yeah.
No.
It's a copy of what the 40s and that was in the 30s and 40s cars, the hot rod style. So they thought they'd go the whole retro thing and build the car on a front wheel drive platform that's small but had style. It's like, a lot of people went for it. A lot of people bought them.
And nasty.
And it's just bad.
Yeah, cheap and nasty.
I'd literally gut the floor pan, widen the car, widen the flares, put a V6 or a V8 into it as a burnout car or a drag car. Yeah, that kind of work, but it's just bad.
No. I know someone I used to know someone actually. She blew up the engine in her PT Cruiser and then paid $5,000 to get it fixed. And this is back when the car was maybe worth 8 or 10. And I just thought, are you out of your mind? Because that, no.
And it wasn't under
no sort of warranty or anything like that. No.
So she just out of her hand, pocket, just.
Yep. It was her money. She paid for it. And I just thought, you are mad.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, okay. PT Cruiser, I just think, is a bad car that's bad. But I suppose really for my experience, the worst car I ever owned, I then bought more of them. Mitsubishi Starion. So
I wouldn't Yeah, I mean, they're not a
So
bad
let me qualify. The one I had to start with was terrible, and it was plagued with problems. And in the course of the ownership experience that I had, it was 2 clutches, 3 engines, 2 gearboxes, 2 diffs, 2 brake master cylinders, a turbo rebuild, a replacement exhaust manifold, second injector system, replacement map sensor, replacement wiper motor.
wiper motor.
Yep, wiper motor. And the problem was, of course, is that you get sort of locked into a car because you've invested time and money into it and stuff like that. What I was doing is buying another Starion or more Starions for parts, but working out obviously that the problems that existed with those cars were similar to the problems that existed with my car, which is why they were being sold cheap or whatever. So I ended up with 9 of these damn things. Yeah, 9. Of which only ever 3 were running and driving cars. And
So much like Fiat's.
pretty much. But the thing is that, and when I say, you know, can a bad car be a good car? This is a classic example of that, because Mitsubishi in the 1980s, they didn't have a huge amount of money. They half-assed a lot of it, where you had a Starion that looked kind of awkward but kind of cool, right? The narrow body ones I don't think look nearly as good as the wide body ones. I had a narrow body one, I had a wide body one.
So you're talking the late model ones or the early model like yours?
Earlier and late.
Oh.
So, you know, the pop-up headlights, they all had pop-up headlights. The later cars had the wider guards and everything like that, like my silver one.
Yep.
You know, you were on camera. And one of the things is that Mitsubishi, they didn't have a lot of money. It was a sports car, it was rear-wheel drive. Not all of them came with limited slip differentials. They all had 4-wheel disc brakes, but then they had steering boxes. You know, not rack and pinion steering. But then they had things like rear-wheel ABS. So it was technologically advanced, but then on the cheap. And it was sort of this really
We'll
weird...
say on the rack and peanut steering, but we'll give you awesome rear ends. But you steer like...
Steering diffs are good. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And they came in 3 different flavors, 3.5 open, 3.9 open, and 3.9 LSD. Actually, I think there was a rare 3.5 LSD as well, but I don't know where those ended up. I never had one, but I had all 3, obviously, because I had so many of these damn cars. And the best ones, obviously, were because we got Australian ones, which Australian version and a Japanese version. Japanese versions were always better, obviously. In America, it was called the Chrysler Conquest or Dodge Stealth.
Yeah.
Rebranded as a Mitsubishi Starion. Later cars had the 2.6, earlier cars had the 2 litre. Halfway through sort of towards the end of the 2 litres development, they had 12 valve heads called the Dash and 3 injectors. So you'd have an extra injector to pump more fuel in under heavier load. They had upgraded turbos like water-cooled turbos, intercoolers. Earlier cars didn't have intercoolers, had all throttle body injection. They always had throttle body injection. And this is back when MPI was becoming sort of the thing. Nissan had done it. And it's just, I really enjoyed a couple of the cars that I owned, in particular the GSR 5, which I'll flash a photo of, which is still around, still owned locally.
Okay.
And the silver wide body, another photo. That went back to Sydney. I got that from Sydney and then it went back to Sydney when I sold it. So, yeah. I would have another late wide body with a 2.6 in it. They are, and see, this
Well, they're
is
all getting up in price now. They're wanted.
The problem is, you get spoiled by modern cars. You get spoiled by something that's newer, and you start to compare unfairly, I think, an older car with a newer car.
Yeah.
And you think, well, this car does all of this sort of stuff and it costs this much, but then this car doesn't do all of that sort of stuff, it costs the same price, but it's older and it looks different or it looks better or something like that. That's the Starion curse, in that because I have an SW20 MR2, which is objectively a completely, you know, it's so much better of a car than any Starion. Got to keep it real, because it's fuel injected, it's still rear-wheel drive. I mean, the mid-engine thing is a bit of a pain sometimes, but looks-wise, it's better, it's wider, it's got more stance, there's better aftermarket support for it.
And it's not all made on the cheap. It's like all made to a standard because of what it is, being a 2-door sports car mid-engine. So it's up there. They didn't cheap out by giving you old-school worm drive steering with
Exactly.
limited slip diff and rear disc brakes.
But that's the weird thing is that the Starion steering, despite the fact that it was steering box, it was variable weight. The power steering would actually disengage after 80 k's an hour.
Okay.
So you didn't get the whole, waftiness. Because there's that dead center thing. If you've ever driven a car with a steering box, there's like a center that's kind of dead where the steering does nothing. Like the steering wheel actually feels like it does nothing.
Every Valiant driver knows that.
Yeah. I mean, my Jeep had it. All the Starions have it. My Scorpion has it. Where the Scorpion isn't as noticeable because the steering's so damn heavy and it's not power steering.
Oh, okay.
So it requires more effort anyway. But on a power steering box car, there's like a dead center. It's almost like a sort of 5 to 10 degrees worth of movement in the steering wheel where it does nothing, and then it loads up, and then you can sort of turn and stuff. And yeah, but anyway, Starion is a bad car, I think, that is good in that under the right circumstances, I would have another one.
Okay.
But it would be a wide body, late model car, probably an 88 or an 89. It would be a Japanese import one, which is a GSR VR. And I wouldn't even mind if it was auto.
Oh, okay.
Because the autos were quite good in those cars.
Well, it's like when I came in, I looked at the Evo. I actually got out and took a photo of the Evo up there and looked at it.
Oh, the Pajero Evolution.
Pajero Evo.
Yep.
Evo 3, mate? No, I don't know.
It's just the Pajero Evolution.
Pajero Evo. Great looking car and everything. Looked inside. Oh, it's auto.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a rally Pajero auto.
But those boxes were ridiculously strong.
Well, it'd have to be, but I don't know what percentage between autos and manuals, but the fact that you just buy a rally spec four-wheel drive off-road vehicle and it's an auto.
I think the percentage of manuals is very low in those cars.
Really? So most of them are auto. So that's kind of weird.
But if you think about it, if you're doing a long
I am thinking
distance,
about it. It's just weird.
If you're doing a long distance,
yeah, but it's a Pajero rally. I mean, if you're cruising around the streets, which is kind of like what they're I guess marketed for as the street-driven rally car, it's like auto. But if you wanted to actually go rally drive, it's like, why do I want to auto? Auto's no good.
It could be the old man in me, but I would have like an Evo 8.
It's just had his birthday, so he's old.
I would have an Evo GTA, which is the automatic one, in a wagon.
Oh, yes.
Like an 8 or 9 wagon? Hell yes. Give me that. Sign me up because that would be awesome. Manual would be fine,
I've seen them, yeah.
but I think an auto would be better in a wagon, just simply because it would suit me more.
It covers everything, doesn't it?
Now, versatile.
Yeah.
And the fact is that, if you're commuting, if you're in traffic and stuff like that, you don't have to worry about constantly changing gears.
Especially in Perth.
My daily drive at the moment is a manual and it's fine and I have no problem driving it. In fact, I quite love the car. It's ticked quite a few boxes for me and it's awesome. But having said that, an auto wagon as an Evo, hell yeah. That's why I quite like things like that.
Would you put the Evo front on it, like an Evo 5, 6 front on it?
No, I'd leave the Evo 8, 9 front on it. Because it is still an Evo. It's still all-wheel drive. It's still turbocharged. But the
GTVs didn't have the Evo... GTA, sorry. They didn't have the Evo spec front on them, though, did they? Like the rally spec Evo. Did they?
Looks exactly the same.
I haven't seen...
The only thing is that I think usually they have got a badge in the front grills that says GTA in it, just to denote the fact that it's the automatic touring version of the car. So they're a little bit softer.
The fact that it was a wagon, you'd kind of figure, no.
You get manual ones too. Yeah, but the GTA badge on an Evo means that it's automatic. So, and they're more rare, obviously, but it just means
flash up a photo.
Maybe. Maybe. All right, let's move on. So, okay. Now I kind of know the answer to this already from you because we talked about this at a recent car show we went to. But vans, yes or no?
Yes. Vans, yes.
That van we saw. See if we can find a photo of it actually and show it up, flash it up. What was it? It was a high ace. Was it a super? No, it was a Lux, a lounge or something, wasn't it?
No, it was a Exceed
Super Lounge or something.
Super Lounge, something like that. It was basically late 80s, I think it was, or early 90s.
Early 90s, I think.
High ace Exceed van that with the curved glass panoramic roof type deal. The wings,
three glass panels.
three of them.
Yeah.
So the wings that roof panels that pop open like air vents that don't do anything, with air conditioning in the front, in between the front two. 8-seater auto velour interior.
Yeah.
Part-time four-wheel drives out to locking front hubs. 2.2 diesel, turbo diesel.
2.2, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like.
It was magic.
It was a recent import from a guy over in Brisbane, and then this guy bought it from him and brought it over to Perth. It was just like, as soon as he rocked up, I mean, he was obviously late in the day, he rocked up and went, oh. Yeah, you could just tell it was something special because it wasn't a typical high-ace passenger vehicle or people mover. It was the top of the range people mover. It still had the rabbit ears out on the back window where it could plug in a TV and had the two rabbit ear aerials, and it was just like, it was phenomenal. It was in such good condition too. It was like a van. But I'm a van guy. I like me Bedford vans, me transit vans. You know, I own the Effie Ambo van.
I don't mind like things like a Chevy Astro.
Express
vans.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If we got those here, I reckon I'd probably have one, to be honest. That's how much I
Chevy
like
Astro. Yeah, I like the bigger vans only because I was a van track. Although I never owned a van, you know, my younger days. But I was a van tragic. I just had posters of all these custom European vans, American vans, you know, the wild flares. And
you like panel vans as well, don't you?
Yeah. I got two. No, one. I got two utes. I got one panel van as well. So it's just vans, because you can just do so much in it. You can just go out, like, because I was a single guy when I was growing up, so I just went wherever. You just sleep in the damn things. You don't have to worry about, where am I going to sleep? In the back of the van. And you go down to the beach, because I lived in Canberra, so we go down to Bateman's Bay on long weekends or whatever and go surfing. There's no surfing in fucking Bateman's Bay. But we'd go surfing, and you just sleep in the back of the van. So it was like, that's what you do. So they're versatile and moving and just carrying shit, because I was always playing with cars. So it was like, in the wagon or the van, you put the stuff in it, off you go.
I do rather like the last version of the Hi-Ace. We talked about this on Sunday. On Sunday at the car shows. The last version of the Hi-Ace before they went to the current ones with the noses on them, like the flat ones, the boxy ones.
Yep.
They look really good. So I had a chance recently
There's an actual group in Perth, which is the highest club, highest fan club.
Yeah.
And they, decked it out with lowered, T37s, lowered tinted windows, half of them van spec and half of them haul your motocross bike in type deal.
Yeah. I don't know I'd go that mad, because I quite like vans typically as they are. I don't really like, custom slamming and all that sort of stuff on a van.
I had big stereos.
I mean, you could.
LEDs.
But the van that I had an opportunity to buy recently was one of those Hi-Ace vans, but it was a passenger one. It wasn't a cargo one. So it had the windows all the way across, silver.
Yep.
Not white, because they're all white. Nothing wrong with that. But, it was silver. And it was the 2.8. Jesus, that's loud.
I turned that off. Oh, I turned it back on.
You didn't turn anything off. It was the 2.8 diesel, automatic. So just a nice cruiser.
Yep.
And, I think vans, when they're done right, they're awesome. In your own time, mate.
Let's do it. So I actually turned it on airplane mode, and then I went to try and look at something. I went, I'm trying to look at the internet when I've got airplane mode. Turned it back off, looked at it. Put it down. And then forgot to turn it back on. Rookie mistake. Anyway.
Oh, well.
But vans, yes. Vans are good.
Hell
I like vans.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that's, I went and bought this transporter van just before I moved house. I got this cheap courier van, VW courier van.
Yeah.
So I could move house, but so I can then later on, because I like going camping, and the Ambo's just
So you have a van? You have that transporter?
I have a van. I actually own a van, a panel van and a courier van.
Right, okay.
So the transporter is actually quite good, because it's a LT35, so it's a 2.5 ton rating.
Oh,
rating.
yeah. Yep. I was going
So
to
it's
say,
not a long wheelbase, but it's not a short wheelbase.
The European vans have good tow ratings on them, actually.
Yeah. So it's like 2 ton and something.
Although I
it's great.
know I'd want to pull 2 ton with that.
It's rear wheel drive turbo diesel.
Yeah, but that little power in a van. I suppose you need torque is more
It's
the thing.
the torque, So I'm actually looking to try and find a tow bar system for the LT35, so I can actually then tow stuff, because it would be a great tow van, because I don't carry a lot of heavy, big stuff. It's more like the Beetles or the small cars. And to go out to stuff like boxer clips out at Southern Cross in October.
Oh, you're
was the Mad Max thing.
stargazing, whatever you're doing.
Well, and that for towing the vehicle, but the panel van, for going out and just do my astrophotography on the weekends out with a group of other people on long weekends and that. The van, just deck it out with bits and pieces and a bed and whatever else, and it's like perfect. And then if I don't need it, I'm actually going to have to look at removable interiors, so you can just take stuff out without having to bolt it in permanently.
Okay.
They use just floor mount screws, so you just hook it in and then you screw it down so it ain't moving, and you just unscrew it, unhook it, take it out if you need to use it as a van. It's like, well, that covers everything then.
Okay.
So
vans, yes, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, vans, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Get one.
All right, next one. We're ripping through the topics here, mate. There's less waffling today.
Better than we did last week when this didn't work and we were sitting there for 2 hours doing the same thing.
Give me an example of what an automotive opinion you used to have that has changed over the years. And I can start us off just to give you an example.
Go for it.
I never used to be that interested in sedans, and now I am.
Oh, okay.
So I never used to look at sedans and think, yes. So I always used to be a real sports car guy, like, 2 doors. If it had 4, I generally wasn't interested. And it all changed when I got not only something that had 4 doors, but also had a wagon back on it. And that was a Nissan Stagea. And that, to me, opened my eyes to how good 4-door cars, or 5-door cars, as the case may be, can be, and how versatile they are. Because it just means that, puffing Billy again, can't help himself. He cannot help himself.
Just because that window's right
It's
there.
a good thing that stuff's not noxious, mate.
Just have to clean your windows.
What is that smell anyway? What is that
Oh,
flavour?
I don't know. I didn't. Because
Smells
I make it up and then I throw the
like
bottle away,
toilet
so
air
I
freshener.
never know what it is.
Toilet air freshener or something?
No.
Kind of smells like that. Urinal cake. Essence of urinal cake. Anyway, yes, so sedans. I do like a nice sedan. One of the cars, my daily driver is a sedan at the moment. Awesome little sedan, which there's a video coming on it, so I'm not going to give the game away just yet. But I won't even flash a photo up, actually. I'm going to keep you in suspense. Anyway, so, sedans.
I always had sedans, so it was a no-brainer for me because my mum had a Datsun 1200 and that's what I learnt to drive in, and I just drove around in a Datsun 1200 sedan. Okay. So it was like sedans, and then I bought, the cheapest car for me to buy was a sedan, so I had an Austin Tasman 4-door sedan.
There were a lot of cars, I think, historically, not so much anymore, where there was a sedan and there was a coupe variant, and the sedan version was always cheaper. Yeah. Skylines, historically.
Any sort of Datsuns,
even back in the day, like 60s Skylines. Yeah, Datsuns, yeah, exactly. So 1200 coupe.
Well, the 60s Skylines back in Japan, you could register them as a truck.
That's right.
So you could write it off on your tax.
Yeah.
Or you buy it cheaper because your regos were cheaper because it was a commercial vehicle, not a passenger vehicle. So everything was kind of cheaper. So people bought more of the wagons and stuff because it was actually cheaper.
That's right. The Datsun 1600 was a wagon as well, or a sedan.
1200s were wagons.
1200s were wagons and sedans and coupes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Datsun 120Y. We talked about those on Sunday. A couple of days ago. He's not a big fan of the 120Y. No. One of my friends,
when you're
Chris,
asking
Chris,
$5,000 for a 120Y, it's like, no.
Yeah, cheap cars the
dash
that
was kind
are
of
very
like
expensive right now.
because it was because I was brought up with the 1200, and then the 120Ys came out. I was probably 10 or 8 or something when they came out. So by the time they were usable, I was in my teens. It was like,
what was that? The 1860s?
Fuck off. You old man. I was brought up with the square, flat, square, because I like my pancake side doors, like style bodies, the square, flat panels. Okay. And the 120Y was it was a newer version of it, and it was like, yeah, the dash was kind of cool because it concaved out.
Yeah.
That was kind of okay, but the rest of it was just kind of like, it's like very conservative styling from what it was. When you went from like Datsun 1600s, Datsun 1200s, and then you came out with the 200B, and you had this 120Y stuck in the middle. It was like, why? No. And yet it was the same mechanical as the 1200, and it went worse. It was like, why? Why do you do this?
That's
the only good thing about it is that they did come with a 5-speed, which we could then fandangle into a Datsun 1200, which I did back in the day in the front driveway or front actual on the roadside outside my house, actually put a 5-speed into a Datsun 1200, which was unheard of at the time. It doesn't just bolt straight in. You have to do a few things like your engine mounts and your clutch cable into the bell house, and you have to machine up a spigot because they're actually smaller. And it was, everyone was, 5-speed in a 1200? What? Because only the Datsun 1200 GX from Japan had the 5-speed. We never got a 5-speed. It was only a 4-speed, so you could not get a 5-speed.
Right.
I somehow managed to get a 5-speed and threw it in a 1200, and it was like, whoa.
I was going to say, like, it seems the Japanese were such an early adopter of the 5-speed manual gearbox, as actually the Italians as well. I think a lot of Lancias from the early 1970s came with 5-speeds, and Fiats actually had 5-speed manuals.
Well, that's because they kept braking so much, they thought, well, build a new gearbox and put an extra gear in case the other ones break.
So, getting back on track.
Ragging out on the feet in this episode.
Yeah, put your comments down below. Yeah.
But yeah, four-door sedans, always my preferred. Wagon if I could, hence my van thing. Wagons if I could, just because you could do as much. You put the back seat down and fill it up with full of crap.
100%.
But I mean, I've had the odd coupe, and it's like, yeah. But practicality-wise, because I was always moving stuff around, whether it was me house moving or just car parts and stuff, anything less than a sedan or a wagon was pointless.
Well, my thoughts were that it was usually only me or one other person in the car anyway. Yeah. So why does it need to be 4 doors and
hence
4
you
seats,
could have gone the ute route and just had a 2-door
100%.
in a ute.
But I always had stuff in the car. I wanted to be able to lock the entire car up rather than, because, you know, utes, you can lock those lids or whatever. But
well, you didn't have them back in the day. So
no,
it's just a canvas, you know, plunk.
Yeah, it's like, and then, you know, whatever's in there is fair game for anybody who wants to get adventurous and look inside.
And you couldn't tie it down, so it did roll around at the back.
Yeah, exactly. But so that was my opinion that sort of shifted because, you know, I always, interestingly enough, when I first went to buy a car, I'd said, right, I want a 4-door 5-speed manual. And my first car was a 2-door automatic. So, yeah, kind of messed up. But then I have my parents to blame for that because they helped me pick my first car, which is a car that I bought back. Not exactly the same car as my Scorpion. I put a photo up. Yep. We talked about it before at length. We won't bore you again. But and then after that, it was all 2-door cars. And my first 4-door car was back in 20. So I'd been driving for nearly 20 years before I bought a 4-door car of any description. A wagon. They were all 2-door cars. And admittedly, I hadn't owned a huge amount of cars over that time. It was only really...
There's your problem.
There's only really 4 cars over that time.
Oh, okay.
But that was, you know, that also included several Starions. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4 Starions. And then, I bought a Nissan Stage and I'm like, hell yes, this is awesome. Wagon and 4 doors. And yeah, that was amazing.
And a bit of performance.
Yeah, definitely. But the fuel bill. Anyway, so an opinion that you've had in the past that has now changed. Can you think of anything?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
Expensive cars.
You used to love them and now you don't?
Like the Countach, like that. When you said that question, I was actually looking up the Countach, you know, beautiful car, blah, blah, blah. Piece of crap. A lot of these supercars are just crap because they're hand built and they're just very utilitarian. They're not like you think the outside of the car and you think, oh, the chassis and everything else would be machined and bent and contoured. No, it's just square tube and bolt together, weld some bits on it, put it together, blah, blah, blah. That's it. It's like Meccano sets, like a home-built car, except sold, you know, for $100,000 by a big company like Ferrari or Lamborghini. It's like, why?
So you used to like them and now you don't? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I must admit, the supercar thing actually is a point that I've got later on, but we'll talk about it now. I used to be fascinated. Like 12-year-old Jay was very fascinated by supercars. Like, look at it. It just looks like a spaceship. You know, you never see them. And that was the thing, is that you never saw these cars on the road. And when you did, it was always an occasion like, you know, oh my God, there's a Lambo, you know?
Yes.
Now you see more cars that sort of look, I guess, similar. And obviously, if you go in the right circles, you know, if you've got enough money, or if you're at the right event, you're going to see more of these cars regularly at these events. But I could honestly say now, because I have, let's face it, the most discounted budgeted supercar ever existing, the SW20 MR2. Love it, but I'm under no illusions that it's not a Ferrari or even a Honda NSX for that matter, even though it's faster in a straight line than an NSX.
See, I'd rather have an NSX than these.
Yeah.
Just because the build quality and what it is pretty much...
So your practical
better.
brain is kicking in there.
Yeah.
Mine does too. And this is the thing is that, like, I've driven a few very, very expensive cars and I don't consider them to be worth the headache.
Yeah.
But then I'm also not worth $11 billion. So I couldn't justify the headache anyway, given that what those cars provide is still a means of transportation. It's still a conveyance. It's still a car.
Yeah, and just the upkeep on them is worth more than most cars outright to buy and do up. That's just the standard servicing.
Yeah.
Even like on some of the top of the line BMW 7 Series, you know, the V8s and stuff. You look at the servicing on those, even time and chain, and it's like,
well, V8.
What?
BMW V8s are junk.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But the cars are like 60, 70, 80, you know, $100,000, $120,000, and it's like
because
the
it's the ultimate
servicing is
driving
like,
machine.
what? There's no.
Yeah, no.
Just the form over function's gone out the window.
But yeah, so supercars, like middle-aged Jay looks at it and just goes, I would consider that now a waste of money.
Yep.
Unless I had the money to throw away at it.
Yeah.
I would own an NSX. I would own an NSX, but
oh yeah, because half the stuff you could fix yourself.
Yeah, but I got to the point where I was ready to buy one, and then said, "This is not," because at the time it was only 3 times worth as much as my MR2 is, and I'd actually said, "This is not 3 times the car."
Oh, okay.
In looks, the NSX is a better looking car. Look, I will 100% agree with that statement. I will, you know, the NSX is a spectacular looking car. There were 2, or is it 3 at that car show on Sunday. You sort of see them fairly regularly, and every time I see one, it's like, oh, that's such a nice looking car. But it is not 3 times the car that my MR2 is. And that was my justification.
You could
it might be a poor justification.
Kind of pick the middle ground and go the GTO? The Mitsubishi 3800 GO?
The 3000 GT.
3000 GT, sorry. Sorry. So many numbers in there. 3.8.
3000 GTO.
Yes, the 3000 GT, because when I was buying my Skyline, I was actually tossing up between the GT and the Skyline.
Yep.
And Skyline won out because slab-sided 31s coupes.
You made the right choice.
Yeah.
Mainly because...
what threw me off was they're underpowered, and if you give them power, the half shafts just snap. They were just weak. Kind of like the Calibras, you know. Oh, nice looking car, blah, blah, put some power to it, everything snaps.
I like 3000 GTs, again, don't flame me. But the big thing about those cars is I did, again, another car I looked at buying. It's very big for not much space inside it. That's my problem. Being 6'1", being not skinny, I sit in it and there's not enough room for me. So if you're 5'10" and built like a rake, fine, not a problem. You'll have a great time in it. But for the size of the car, and it's much the same thing that I have about the Mark IV Supra, is that you have this big car, but there's no room inside it. Yeah. And I know that that's probably because, you know, you need room for mechanical components and stuff like that. But
that dash layout, kind of like the Z cars at the time, was just cockpit style.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And that took up a lot of room. So the open feeling is gone.
That's the NSX.
It's wrapped around you.
That's one of my biggest gripes about the NSX is the fact that in typical 90s Honda fashion, the seat's too high, the dash is too low, the windscreen's too big, and which it makes it look spectacular, but it's not great to sit in. Yeah. For me, because I feel like I'm sitting on the seat rather than in it.
Yeah. So the only time I had any touching of these vehicles is when I worked as a security guard in Melbourne, and I actually had to look after a Nissan dealership, which had a small fire on. At the time, they had the new Nissan 300 ZX.
Oh, yeah.
I know, because there's one sitting on the showroom floor, and I'm in my, I think, late 20s, early 30s, late 20s. Really? And there's their twin turbo Z32 sitting on the showroom floor. It's like, open the door, sit in, and that cockpit style, that actually felt good to be in.
Yes. So
They actually felt good. I
Again-
couldn't test any, Toyotas or anything like that, but this Nissan, the Z32, I just sat it and it was like,
yeah,
ooh.
the driving position is spot
Ooh.
on for almost any size. Is
Yeah.
the thing. They don't have that thing where I think Nissan. It's funny because you look at these car manufacturers. You look at historically, they have this sort of thing that they do. It's not like a design thing. It's just something that's typical in that Mazdas and Hondas, typically you sit too high in the 90s and sort of early 2000s. Like my little Mazda, my gripe is I sit too high in that. Well, I gave the game away, Mazda. Yes, it's a Mazda. Anyway, coming soon in a future video. But yeah, I sit too high in that so that as a result, the seat is further back and more reclined so that I'm more comfortable in it with, arm lengths and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Same with the Honda. That was the biggest gripe with the NSX, is that I sat too high in it. The dash was sort of at my knees. And yeah, you got to sit in one to know what I'm talking about, right? It feels sporty, but it doesn't feel sporty in a way that you are in it.
Like supercar-ish, which is what they were kind of.
Whereas I sit in my MR2,
you're in it.
that's a spot-on driving position for me, because not only that, I'm hunkered down. I have so much headroom that I can literally bend forward slightly, put a helmet on inside the car. That's how much headroom I've got. So I've got enough. I've got more than enough helmet headroom to be able to put it on. That's the thing. An NSX, you wouldn't have a hope in hell of doing that. Not only that, but also SW20 Turbo MR2, the 3rd gen, which is what I've got, is faster in a straight line than an NSX. Yeah, by half a second, quarter miles quicker. It's cheaper to buy. It's smaller. Weight's fairly similar in that the NSX has got a lot of aluminium versus the MR2 being completely steel.
And the parts to actually get it into race mode is off the shelf.
Both. For both.
Really?
Yep. But the NSX is considerably more expensive is the thing. Because it's more
If you're just
specific.
doing club-based racing, MR2 is a lot cheaper to get in on the ground and start racing and actually enjoy yourself, as you said, because it's just as fast.
Just cheaper.
Just as fast and corners a bit better because there's less roll weight and everything. So it's a lot better than.
Oh, I don't know about cornering. I mean, I haven't driven an NSX in anger. In fact, I've never driven an NSX. I've sat in one. That's it. But sitting in it was enough to say no.
Oh, okay.
And that was, I mean, I've sat in a Lamborghini Diablo as well. Never drove it. That was horrific to sit in.
Oh, okay.
The seats didn't recline. They slid forward and back. The dash, like the actual gauge cluster, was far too intrusive. It was very high. So you sat down in it, but you also didn't sit straight in the car. You sat pointed towards the center of the car. So you had, if I can describe it, you sat in with the steering wheel being here and the pedals being sort of there, like sort of not in a straight line. You didn't sit in a straight line in that car.
Oh.
It wasn't even remotely straight. It was very, very, it must be an Italian thing. Maybe it's a right-hand drive converted thing, but it was just no. And I think the single best thing about the way those cars and their existence is the way they look.
They're art.
They're art. Not the way they drive.
No.
Them up.
So it's just.
It's only in the morning, mate.
I know. I didn't get to bed till nearly 1 o'clock, and then I set the alarm for 9 o'clock, and then I woke up at 4 a.m. So it was like.
But that's a lot of cars. Like, they look spectacular.
Oh yeah. And as like
to drive,
Hoovie and all those, they.
Shout out to Hoovie.
They say. I think even Tavarish might have done it as well.
Shout out to Tavarish. Hi, Tavarish.
Because you want to get the views.
Why
Get
not?
the views. They say that living with the car is an absolute pain, but they're just an art piece. You don't want to drive them. You just want to have them sitting there and look at them. And you see a lot of the photos of people who can afford to in their living room. They have an art car.
Yes.
They have cars parked in their living room because they can.
100%.
It's an art car. It's not a driving car.
Yep.
It's an art car, and that's one of the points with it. It's a design feature that it looks so good just sitting still that you just want to do that. Just park it in your lounge room and just have it sitting there.
One thing that's interesting though, probably my favorite automotive podcasters. Hello, Jason Camisa, Derek, Tam, Scott, the Carmudgeon show. Now you should have seen this. If you haven't done your homework, because I did tell you about this. Naughty. Nah, it's all good. They call it the Carmudgeon show. So not Curmudgeon, but Carmudgeon. So they do what we're doing, like, where the car cranks, Carmudgeon. Taking more than a little bit of inspiration from there. No, Carmudgeon. as in Mudgeon. I'll put a link anyway. Those guys, they had an interesting conversation recently, I think, in a recent episode that I watched about how these cars, like, they become too easy. Like these supercars, like
Too easy to what?
well, they criticize the NSX, for example, for being too much, like too easy, like not dramatic enough, like it's just an Accord with a nice body or something like that.
Subtle.
So it's not special enough.
Okay, yeah.
So, it doesn't have like a screaming V12.
Which every one of the
I wonder how
supercars
much
do.
of that's going to come out on the microphone. Apologies if you're
might
listening.
Talking would
Apologies.
do that.
Apologies. I might. Yeah. Anyway, you're shocking. But yeah, they were talking about it being a little bit too easy to live with. Like this is a sort of car that
not smack you in the face type.
Well, the looks, and they had some strange scale which I can't exactly remember, but talking about like what the looks promise versus what the car delivers.
Oh, okay.
And I can imagine the NSX would be
Like a hot girlfriend who can't cook.
cook yourself, you lazy bastard. Anyway, so yeah, it was just one of those things I think where the look suggested something that perhaps the car didn't deliver by way of. I mean, apparently it's a very, very good performer. I haven't driven one. The numbers would suggest that it's quite a decent performer, but it's not amazing.
No.
I think
still
where
only
that car
V6, isn't
shines
it,
is
so-
in its handling, and how well mannered it is on a track or at the limit. It's not a car that bites you like
Yeah.
a Ferrari or a Lambo might,
Yeah.
or even my
Exactly.
MR2, which will bite you if you are not on it. If you are not paying attention and you don't have the reflexes. Admittedly, my reflexes, they're not that sharp, but they're old. But I haven't crashed, not yet. Anyway, someone else crashes that for me. We won't go into that. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I think supercars, they become almost too difficult, where there's that drama associated with it, and the fact that it makes all these noises, and you're driving along, and it's like, what was that noise? What's happening here? Why is it squeaking there? That sort of thing.
Yeah,
and I agree that you sort of look at it and you go, okay, looks fantastic, but I don't want to drive it.
Yeah.
No, I don't even want to own it or go anywhere near it. Look, don't get me wrong, I've driven some expensive stuff, and if someone gave me the chance to drive like a Ferrari or 40, you wouldn't be able to stop me. I'd break the sound barrier getting there to try and drive it, right? But I don't want to own one.
I'd push little kids out of the way just so I can sit there. Push the stroller out of the way.
They're spectacular looking cars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But,
Well, the F40 was apparently the car for the driver to own, because all the others are all crap, all the latter ones. F40 was the best of the Ferraris. It kind of stopped there and just went downhill from there.
I think because there was a debate recently about the F40 versus the F50, and I never really liked the F50. I thought it had an ugly front, and I thought it was just too big and too wide. Whereas the F40 was smaller. It was a little bit sort of. No, I don't have any photos of it here. I'll have to flash a photo up.
I can't remember what the F50 looks like, but I know what the F40 looks like.
Yeah.
And that's the saying that the F40 was the peak Ferrari. That's the driver's car.
A lot of people still agree with that.
Yeah. And everything else just went afterwards. So.
Yeah. And I've driven a couple of Ferraris, and actually one of the worst cars and one of the most disappointing cars I ever drove was a Ferrari. 308 GTS.
Oh, yes, because we did talk about this.
Magnum PI's car. And, it was cramped, it was rattly, it was overly noisy, but not in a good way. Like it wasn't it's got V8, but it wasn't like a good noise, it was just noise. Didn't ride very well. I barely fit in it. I know back in the day, Tom Selleck didn't fit in that car either.
Yeah, well, he's, 6'2", wasn't he?
No, he's taller. I think 6'4" or something. I think he is. Or 6'3". He's taller than me anyway. I know that much. And I didn't fit in it either. The gear shifter was like you sort of needed both hands, and the clutch was very heavy. Like to change. Like I found myself when I drove it. I only drove for 15 minutes. I found myself not wanting to change gear.
Because it's just too much of a pain.
And it's a gated manual. It has that, like the gear shifter. When you engage the gear, it had that beautiful snickety clickety sound because it's gated shifter, makes that nice metallic click sound. It's awesome, but it was spoiled by the fact that you had to use both hands. I mean, I'm relatively strong, so I managed, but it made me not want to change gears, which made me not want to drive it, which means that the whole experience was ruined because the car looks so spectacular.
Yeah,
Like you look at it and you just go,
Oh yeah, it was a symbol of the 80s, wasn't it? It's just that kind of car.
100%.
And yeah, it's kind of the thing with dream cars, or like pop stars or rock stars or what's the name, never meet your idols. Never drive your idol cars.
Don't meet your heroes, yeah.
They're shit. They're not what you think. You put them up here and they're like, eh.
Well, I don't know. Like,
Well, it's like with the Lamborghini Countach, great looking thing. Oh, I always want one. I had model cars, kits. I put together
Still do,
kits
yeah.
in there. And and then when you finally get this in, you go, eh.
actually, I remember an old episode of Top Gear, the UK Top Gear, and it would have been like 2003 or something like that. So, 20 years old. Anyway, so they had one of the presenters, and it was one of the presenters who was there for only one season. Jason Dorr was his name. And he had a bunch of primary school kids, and he brought in some contemporary cars. And the thing is that so many of those cars were so forgettable that I can't remember a single car. But every single one of the kids went, wow, when a Countach showed up, and it was their favorite.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it was at that point, I think, 20 years old. So all the contemporary cars at the time, they were like, yeah, it's nice. And the Countach, whoa, look at that thing. And that was the whole point of Lambo, is that it looks so spectacular.
Yeah, it was a design exercise, not a driving exercise.
I mean, they're fast in a straight line, and you could pedal them
So
to
is
be
a
fast
GTO.
and stuff.
Monaro or bloody
Yeah.
Buick.
Yeah, I mean, and they would handle, but it just seemed like there were so many compromises made.
Yeah.
And it was that sort of status symbol, of which, again, back to supercars, I have no interest in that.
Yeah.
I mean, the MR2 is dramatic looking and stuff like that, but I could have bought a Gallardo or something, or, an NSX or whatever for the status, but I was more interested in driving it than having people look at it.
Did see a little video tube short of a guy looking at the Porsche Cayenne, I think it was.
Full drive?
Yeah, big SUV. And they went underneath it to have a look and see what is a Porsche. And it was all Volkswagen, Audi, and Audi parts specific that was built the car.
Yeah.
There was nothing Porsche on it.
It's a
Like the
Volkswagen,
control arms and the suspension and
it's a
the
Volkswagen
diff.
Touareg.
Well, basically,
It is. It is. That's what
So
a
you're
Volkswagen
paying for a
Touareg.
Porsche name, and it's literally a Touareg.
That's like the Audis and stuff. The Macan is a Q7, I think.
Yeah.
Or is it a Q8? It might be an Audi Q8, the Porsche Macan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a different body, that's all.
Yeah.
But they're all guilty of that. I mean, you look at things like...
But the thing is, they're marketing towards the higher class of people, saying this is a better car. It's like,
Well, okay.
yeah, it might have more leather or something in the insides, but the car is literally just an old Audi or a Volkswagen.
Okay. So as a qualifier, I think it would be a better car,
I
but
think, except all the suspension
when you
is
look
Audi.
at... Yeah, well, when
So
you
it
look
rides
at...
and handles like an old Audi or new Audi.
But when you look at the underpinnings and think, oh, look, so it's
It's
not as fancy as it might otherwise suggest.
Yeah.
Like it's not a
Like-
Porsche developed product, it's a Porsche enhanced product. That's a crucial
it's
difference.
enhanced. Yeah.
So it's not really a Porsche. It's not something that's made by Porsche. It's something that Porsche's got and gone, okay, we'll have that and make it better.
Well, make it fit our brand.
Objectively,
It's like,
maybe.
yeah.
That's
And
an opinion. It's
But then you look at, say, Mercedes and the AMG stuff. It's AMG enhanced. Well, in the old days it was. I mean, now it's all in-house, so it's like HSV. It's just order the parts and they'll just add it on. But it was something extra. It was a Mercedes-Benz AMG.
Yeah.
It was specific, kind of like your what was the Commodore equivalent? The
HDT?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a
Holden
Commodore
dealer team, yeah.
with the Holden dealer team stuff added onto it. So it had two specific purposes that were joined together and was like, oh, extra special.
Or Tickford and Ford, I think it was, which became sort of FPV, I think.
Ford Performance Vehicles. Yeah,
think
kind
they
of,
had
before
some
they
sort
just
of-
pulled that all together.
Yeah.
So it was like that. So the Mercedes-Benz was like extra special with the AMG stuff on it, which it isn't now. But Porsche is kind of like, it's
having
not
said
even that. It's like, it's just
Having said that, though,
pudding of such. It's just like,
I subscribe to the notion that you shouldn't really have a too strong an opinion on something if you haven't interacted with it properly. So when people talk about Porsches and they go, oh, I don't see the point, drive one.
I mean, mind you, I
Drive
would
one.
buy an old 911 turbo Porsche if I could.
Old ones are the most expensive ones. Are you
Yeah,
out
now.
of your mind?
Yeah. No, I was thinking like the, what was it, the 996?
Yeah, 50 grand.
Yeah. Compared to any other car of Porsche lineage that would be even double
But see,
that.
here's the thing, right? So you get to that point and you say 50 grand.
Yeah.
Now, think about all of the cars that are newer or more capable or perhaps faster or more entertaining than a Porsche 996, 911 for 50 grand. If someone gave me 50 grand and said buy a car, it wouldn't be one of those. Honestly, it wouldn't. It might be two cars actually, but I would look for something entirely different to that. Well, actually, not entirely different, but it wouldn't be one of those.
What would you get? You know, if you had the 50 grand and it's like, well, I wouldn't buy a Porsche, but what would it be?
It's actually quite a hard one.
You just said you would.
Oh, I'd
I don't get the money to buy two cars. What would you get? Oh, I don't know.
Well, okay. I'd probably buy a GT86 and a Lexus IS350 as a two-car solution for 50 grand. You could get roughly both of those for 50 grand, I reckon. Yeah. IS350, maybe an F Sport, so that's the sportier one. Be a daily, automatic, flappy paddles, fantastic, and then a manual GT86 or something like that. You can get those for 20 grand, 25 grand. So there you go. There's your 50 grand car solution. But if you're talking one car, then
well, yeah, if I said 996 Porsche, it's like, well, that upper limit, what would you get? Considering that that price point and that type of car, what have you got? You got.
I'd see if I can find a Mark IV Supra for that money. Yeah.
But then, as you said, then
one
you
Mark
can't
IV Supra,
really.
Obviously.
The sitting in them is quite. Considering the size of the car,
I can fit.
I suppose Porsche wouldn't be that much bigger either, so.
Oh, the 996 is actually pretty good interior space-wise. I don't like the seats, and the interior is pretty low rent for a Porsche. You look at the interior, and this is the thing, right? So you have to have interacted with some of these cars before, because anybody who's never sat in a Porsche before will sit in a 996 and go, oh, yeah, it's quite nice. But then if you sit in a 997, which is a model immediately after that, you'd go, wow, the 996 is crap. That's the big thing, is that it's that background of knowledge that if you don't have it, you're going to think, oh yeah, it's fine. And it does affect your opinions of other things. So it's the curse of knowing too much, I guess, or experiencing too much, or interacting with too much, in that because I've interacted with some of these expensive cars, I sit in some of the, like the contemporaries to the 996 or whatever, or, even a 996 and sit in it and just go, it's all right. Where's the 50 grand's value though? But the thing is, those cars were so expensive at the time, especially in Australia. In Australia, cars, imported cars in particular, especially the European ones, are so much more expensive, equivalent money-wise, than they are in, like, say, the US.
Or anywhere else.
Well, the US,
you just got
the US, you can
our
buy
government just taxed anything extra because, does that cost a bit more money? I will tax you extra on that. We've got the luxury car tax or luxury anything tax. It's like, how are we expecting to do anything, get up there if you keep taxing our stuff? I mean, if you're already up there, doesn't matter. If you're trying to get up there, oh no, we'll just tax you, keep you down middle class. You Australian government. And now we don't have a car industry at all, and we've still got taxes on them for any import or new car or whatever, because we don't have a car industry, but we're still paying the taxes that apply to having a car industry. Why don't we just abolish it? Oh, it's too hard. Well, if you set the rules up,
they'd lose money. That's why they like the
they like
extra money they get out of it.
They get for no reason at all. It's like, screw you,
conspiracies.
Australian government. You just If you're gonna destroy something, get rid of it. Get rid of everything associated with its market cap. Don't.
All right, let's go with one more topic. I reckon.
One more.
One more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make it a good one.
This is a good one. When you see these new cars, as long as you're done, when you see these new cars and they have these, it nearly fell over. Bang! Anyway, when you see these new cars and
luxury or standard?
Doesn't matter. Daytime running lights, which seems to be standard on pretty much any new car these days, right?
Yep.
one of the biggest gripes, and weigh in obviously because that's what you hear. One of the biggest gripes I have is that people, because the gauge cluster is illuminated, and it's illuminated during the day and it's illuminated at night time, they don't turn their headlights on.
Yes.
But they think that because the daytime running lights, because they're LEDs, they're bright, it's lighting up enough.
That suffices them not having to put on their lights.
Turn on your bloody headlights.
Yeah. But then...
And more importantly, don't have your high beams on all the time either. Oh my God. What is wrong with people? Like, so many times I've seen people either no headlights or they're driving around the suburbs with their high beams on all the time.
They are not people who drive cars. It's a convenience for them. It's a conveyance from one to another.
They're not
they
car people.
barely know how to control the car. Like if anything happens, like a wet road, which is why when it rains, everyone drops by half the speed because, I don't know how to control my car when it's driving. Why are you driving in the rain in a car you don't know how to drive?
Yeah.
Go back to
Driving school.
driving school. Fuck off the roads. But that's what happens. People go, I don't know how to drive my car unless it's dry, sunny, and it's a straight line.
Yeah.
Then I'm all for it. But anything else happens and I have no idea what I'm doing. It's the same when all that started coming in on these cars. It tells you on the dash if you've got your high beam on or not, and people just don't even look at their dashes.
Yeah, it's like usually a blue indicator that's pretty hard to miss.
Yeah.
If you're looking. Like if you've ever paid attention to the dash, the gauge cluster in your car, you will see the indicator that's bright blue that says your high beams are on, dickhead. Turn them off.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it's one of those things that absolutely drives me spare because
the people buy the cars and don't even look at what it does.
Yeah. And admittedly,
and then when you point it out, they go, "Oh, really?"
So my VF wagon, the VF Commodore Calais V wagon thing, had automatic headlights, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine because at a particular point it turns the lights on for you. But I had set it to auto, so that you had your daytime running lights, and you would have your headlights on, which turns your daytime running lights off when the headlights come on.
Yep.
And that's good because it shows you an indicator on the dash that your headlights are on, not your daytime running lights.
Oh, okay.
So it actually shows you a little icon that shows you headlights on. And then obviously your high beam was a blue indicator as well saying, you've got your brightest lights on. Maybe think about not having them on the whole time, which would be good. It seems to me, I guess it's an old thing. I've been guilty of this in the past actually, where maybe the low beam globe's blowing and as an emergency measure, you've just got your high beams on all the time. But stop it. Headlight globes are like $6 each or something like that. Yeah. $5, $10.
Oh no, because people don't know. If they can't look at their dash to see what lights are on, they're not going to be able to replace their headlights. Or even check to see if there's anything blowing. It's usually a friend that they're driving with in another car that say, hey, your tail light's out. Otherwise, they will never know. They will not check it. No one's going to tell them unless it's a friend that's driving with them, which you don't usually do. You don't drive two people in two different cars.
And your mechanic should check this anyway.
And yeah,
assuming you get your car serviced.
If they get it serviced, this is the thing. No one checks, and I've seen cars drive around. The only light works on the car is the third brake light. Nothing else works. It's like, do you even know what your car's doing with your tail lights and your indicators? Bulbs work or not? No, they don't know.
What absolutely astounds me,
if they don't even look at their dash, they're not going to look at the rest of the car.
Exactly. But what astounds me is you see cars, and you know cars, so you know when the introduction of automatic headlights and daytime running lights came in, right? So you see some of these 90s and 2000s cars, right, where the cluster isn't lit up unless you've got your lights on.
Yeah.
So they're driving around in darkness in the car with no lit up cluster. So it's like, don't you notice maybe that there should be something illuminated in front of you? But
can you see? What do you got? Cat eyes? You can see perfectly fine in the dark at your dash, which is black.
And honestly, I reckon I see it several times a week. And I don't drive a huge amount. Like I drive a little bit, commuting and seeing clients and stuff. But I reckon I would see it 2 or 3 times a week, where someone is driving around in darkness, and I'm not talking about dusk. I'm talking about it's 9 o'clock at night, and they are driving around without their headlights on. It's like, how can you not know that your cluster, have you never interacted with a car before? It has a gauge cluster. It lights up when you turn the headlights on. Now, obviously, it's a different situation with the daytime running lights because these people obviously go into automatic mode and just think, oh, because my dash is lit up, it must mean my headlights are on. No, set your headlights to automatic.
You
Let the
click,
car take
click,
care of it
or
for you.
Click, click,
because it would
your
seem
headlights are on. If you get in the car and you don't do any of the clicking, your lights aren't on. Just because your daylights are automatic.
lights.
Nothing is, well, unless you've got automatic lights like you, but at least then they'll turn on.
They will.
But no one turns the dials or the gauges or the switches on all the way to have your lights on. It's like, well, if you haven't done that, they're not on. What are you doing? Driving around as if that would. I know. This is what I say. People just use it as a conveyance and they just do not think about it. They just don't think.
No, they get in there and they're like...
They just don't think. It's like, it's just
they just zone out.
a zone out, a vehicle that they don't even own. It's just that they just happen to pay for, but they just jump in it and drive it, and they don't think about servicing if your light bulbs or tail lights are blown or anything. They had no clue about anything like that. You know, your lights are on or not. They just, no idea.
Actually, you just reminded me of a story. Someone I know, and they'd owned this car for, would have been 4 or 5 years. They did not know this car had cruise control.
Oh, okay.
There was a specific stalk for it.
Yeah.
They had never thought to look at it, to interact with it in any way, to investigate it at all, to work out that this car had cruise control. And when I drove their car with them in the passenger seat and turned the cruise control on, I'm like, the question was, oh, what did you just do? I said, I turned the cruise control on. Does this have cruise control?
I mean, my Camry's got it,
cars.
and it's the first car I've had with cruise control on it.
Isn't it good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a trip down to Mandurah or wherever, like Pinjarra, if I'm going to a car show at Maroona like I did the other weekend, turn it on, off I go. But sometimes accidentally, because you've got to push the thing in, and on your dash it says cruise.
Because you look at your dash, right? Yeah.
Because I look at my dash, but you accidentally hit it. Because it's separate and it's actually tied to the steering wheel, sometimes it'll sit wrong and I'll jump in the car and accidentally hit it when I go to pull the indicator and whatever else, so I'll accidentally hit it. And I'll see the dash go, oh, my cruise is on, click off.
Yeah.
But for 5 years, I can't see how you'd not know that it had it.
I don't understand
Considering it is a separate stalk tied to the steering wheel, not to the column, and you wouldn't know.
I don't understand either. Anyway, we're living up to our car cranks name here, aren't we?
Cranky old people. Get off my lawn.
It's catharsis, though. Let's call it therapy.
Yes, it
we,
is.
We have vented, and now we
told
feel
our problems.
better.
Everyone agrees with our problems, so we're fine. If you don't,
Maybe.
there's the comment section. But
anyway, so we're going to finish there. Subscribe to Dodgee's Garage.
Dodgee Garage, I'm actually doing some stuff now. I've a couple of videos in the last couple of weeks now of me. Not me doing stuff on my own cars, because I'm not allowed to do that yet, but me going to car shows and showing what's at the car shows.
We'll put a link to the channel in the description, as we have in previous videos anyway. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I don't even know what episode this is. It's like 4 or something, or 5 of car cranks? 6? Doesn't matter. Anyway, this isn't our first, and it probably won't be our last. So subscribe and like and share and all that other stuff.
Comment,
and
tell us we're good. Tell me you like your beard. It's just the usual stuff.
Anyway, thank you. See you next time.
All right.